Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, Be'ezras Hashem. Hi, Steve. We're starting the Mishnah on Daf Chav Ches Amud Aleph. Hi, how are you? Okay, we're going to start the Mishnah on Daf Chav Ches. It's going to be a short daf today. And again, like we are speaking with Yankel, a lot of the stuff that we're learning here is not so relevant because the communications that we have, if I have a question whether the get is valid or not, I could just make one phone call to the Avis and ask them, did you sign on the get? But then the time when there was no communication, so all these questions come up. And here's one of those questions. Look at this Mishnah. Hamaybe get, someone brings a get from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. Okay. V'hinichoi zokein oichoila. When he left the person, the husband that wrote the get, he was a zokein. Zokein in the time of Chazal. I don't know what the lifespan was when these Mishnayos were written, but Zokein is a 60-year-old man. He's 60 years old. Oy choila, or he left the husband when he was sick. Now he comes to Eretz Yisrael months later to deliver the get. Should he deliver the get? Perhaps the husband died, right? Would you say maybe the husband died because he was an older person? Or
she doesn't need a get anymore.
Oh, but if she has a get, excellent question. So Rashi brings that if you give her the get, she won't fall to Yibam. Because by giving her the get, and she has no children, so if we find out later that her husband died, she would never fall to Yibam. So should we give her the get or not give her the get? Maybe he died and then she doesn't need the get. Maybe she died and maybe he died and this get, you can't give a get after Misa. If a person died and said, give this get to my wife after I die, there's no get. So the Mishnah says, the shliach can give it over, even though he doesn't know. He can't make sure for certain, but he can give it to the woman on the chazaka, on the assumption that he is still alive. And therefore, Bas Yisrael Hanasui Lekoyen. Another case. So this is case number 1. Here's another case where we're going to say that the husband is still alive. Unless somebody dies, we always say Chazaki, he's still alive. Bas Yisrael Hanasui Lekoyen. Let's say a Bas Yisrael that's married to a Kohen. When a Yisraelis is married to a Kohen, she eats truma, right? Because she's a wife of a Kohen. What happens? V'holach ba'alu l'mdina sayam. The husband went to out of the country, right? She doesn't know if he's alive, right? She could continue eating truma as the wife of a kohen, with the assumption that he's still alive. As long as a person is alive, we assume he's going to remain alive. Another case, third case, the Mishnah says, someone sends his carbon chatas from let's say a person's chayav a carbon chatas, and he lives in Italy, and he sends the carbon chatas, the animal, or we're going to learn it's a bird, from Chutz La'aretz, he sends it to Eretz Yisrael. Now, it's a carbon chatas. You have to make sure that the person that is sending the carbon chatas is still alive, because if he died, you can't bring a carbon chatas for a person that died. There's a whole chatas shemeser ba'aleha. You don't bring it on the mizbeach. You have to actually let the animal die. So a person sent his carbon chatas from outside of Eretz Yisrael, from the countries outside of Eretz Yisrael. Makriv and Oiseh, they could offer it up in the Beis Hamikdash becheskas with the assumption shukayim that the owner is still alive. So now the Gemara says a fascinating thing. Rava commented on this Mishnah. Lois Shanu, our Mishnah was taught El Zokein Shaloi Higia Legvuras. We're talking about a 60-year-old man that did not yet reach 80. So then you assume that he's still alive. The choila, and that we said that a sick person is still alive and didn't pass away, is sharoiv choilem lechayim. Most sick people are still alive. Maybe they're not 100% better, but they're still going to live. So even if it's months ago that they gave the get, you can still give the get with the presumption that the sender, although he was old or sick, He's still alive.
Right.
Now the Gemara says, if he's already over 80 years old, right? So then that's a different story. If he's over 80 years old, so the goises, or he was a goises. Goises means he was moribund, which means he's at the point of misa. The person is at the point of death. He's in the ICU. He's very, very sick. There, you're not supposed to give the get. Why? Sharoiv goises in the misa, because most people who are goises or who are moribund are going to pass away. So loy, don't give the get. So what the Gemara is, Rava was machadish, that Rava says, if the person giving the get was over 80 years old, and you took months to bring the get to Eretz Yisrael, don't give the get. Why? Because the person probably passed away. So that's the Gemara's question. Eisvei, how could you say that, Rava? Eisvei Abaya asked the question against Rava. Maybe get, the Brisa says, someone brings a get. A person who brings a get, and he left the man when he was old. This old doesn't mean he was 60. He means afila ben meyashana. Even if he's way old, he's over 100 years old, and he sent you a get, and you have to deliver it to his wife. He's 100-year old and he's divorcing his wife. You don't have to assume that he passed away. So you have to assume that he's still alive. So how do you say, Rava, that if he's over 80, no, you have to double check because maybe he passed away. And here the Brisa says that even if he's 100 years old and he's sending a get, we assume that he's still alive. Tifta, this is a refutation against Rava. So the Gemara says, I have a teretz for you. If you want, even the iflig, the beautiful teretz. When a person is over 90 years old, and even if he's 100 years old, once he showed that he has the genetic makeup, he's already capable of living old, you assume that he's gebecheskas shukayim. He has a cheskas chai, and you could always assume that he's going to live even longer. That's what the Gemara is saying. And therefore, if he's over 90 and he's sending a get to his wife, you don't have to double check because he's probably still alive and you can give the get. But if he's over 80, from 80 till 90, then you have to double check if he's still alive because he doesn't have the cheskas chayim from 80 to 90. But from 60 to 80, then you still consider to be a cheskas chay with presumption. So that 80 to 90 is crucial years. But once a person reaches over 90, Shain Kivin, the iflik, he lived so long, iflik, he's going to continue to live long. Beautiful Gemara. So now I want to point out that we say that there's a mitzvah in the Torah to get up for an old person. There, the Torah uses the expression mipnei seva takim, which means in front of an old person you have to stand up. That means over 70. Darta pnei zakein is referring to a Talmud Chacham, but mipnei seva takim, that's referring to somebody 70. You have to stand up. Now the Gemara goes and asks a question. Rabbi le Abaye le Rabba. Abaye asked a question for Rabba. Now we learned in the Mishnah. Maybe get a Mishnah said that you always assume that the person's still alive when he's an old person or a chayla uraminhu. I'll ask you a stira. The Brisa says a person says to his wife, I want this get, and this should take effect 1 hour before I die. So it's talking about a Bas Yisrael is married to a Kohen, and the Kohen is giving this get to his wife, but he's saying that he doesn't want the get to take effect unless an hour before he died. So it could be a 40-year-old man. So, but there's always an assumption that maybe he's going to die in an hour from now, and it's going to turn out lemafreya backwards that she was asa from truma an hour before he passed away. So the Brisa says asura le'echol betruma b'yad. She's not permitted to eat truma right away. Why? Because you assume that this person's going to pass away, and an hour before he passes on, she was mugureshes. So every hour you assume this is the hour before he passed away. He's going to pass away, and therefore she's not allowed to eat truma. So we see that we don't say a person's chazaka is that he's going to be alive. In fact, this brisa seems to imply that the chazaka, the assumption is that a person's dying. Amalei. So this was a biased question to Rabbah. Amalei, Rabbah answered, Truma agitin karamis. You asked me a question of Truma and Gittin. So therefore, why by Truma do you say the chazaka is he's going to pass away? We're concerned maybe he's going to pass away. And by Gittin, you say we assume that the person's still around. So the answer is very simple. Truma, efshar. Truma, if you answer a woman from eating truma, bas Yisrael, she's not going to starve. She could eat chulin. She could find other sources of food. But get, loy efshar. But you can't be machmir by a get and say that we always assume that the guy died. Because once you do that, think about it. Anytime a person sends a get from Medina Siyam, he's a healthy 35-year-old, sends a get from Medina Siyam to Eretz Yisrael, you're always going to be concerned, oh, he died. And therefore, the get is not a good get. So therefore, it was impossible to institute the assumption that a person is going to pass away by get. By Truma, it's possible. Let's say that he's going to pass away, and we're going to ask her from Truma what she's going to eat. She'll find some other food to eat. She doesn't have to eat Truma. So that was Rabbah's teretz. So Abaya was persistent and asked him, wait a second, but our Mishnah says something about Truma also, that we assume that the person's alive. Remay Truma. I'll ask you a stira from Truma to Truma. It's not in our Mishnah. We learn Bas Yisrael Nesul L'Koyin V'Alach Ba'al Medina Siyam Oicheles B'Truma V'Cheskes Shu Kayim. Our Mishnah says that a Bas Yisrael that's married to a Koyin and the husband went away on a business trip, Medina Siyam. You always assume that he's alive. So the chazaka is what? That a person remains alive. Or a meaning, well, I'll ask you a stira. Hareza Gita Shah Achas Koydem Misasai. It says, Bas Yisrael to a Kohen. The Kohen says to his wife, here's a get 1 hour before I pass away. So it takes effect. Asura Lecha B'Trumiyat. She's asked to eat Truma right away. Why? Because I assume that he's going to die in the next hour. And an hour before that, she was already Mugurecha. So she cannot eat Truma anymore because she's not going to be considered the wife of the Kohen. So here, Truma to Truma. It's the same mitzvah. And yet in one place you say Truma, we say the chazaka is that a person is still alive. And then by another place, the Brisa says by Truma, with the chazaka is, you say that a person passed away. So what's the answer? Amar Rav Adam B'Rei Rav Yitzchak, Shani Osam, it's different. The Ashaharei Osra Alav Sha'achas Koidim Misasai. Since by the second Brisa, it's not, the presumption is that he's alive, but everybody's going to die. And the question is this an hour before he died? So then we can assume that maybe this is the hour before he's passing away. So it's not uprooting the cheskes that he's alive. It's just the assumption is that maybe this is an hour before he died. So therefore, you got to assume that she will be asa to eat. So she's asa to eat the truma. Maskif, law, Papa, Mimai, the Ihu, my inspiration, Dilma Ihi, my inspiration. The only reason why, how do you know that he's going to die first and she's asa to eat truma? Maybe she's going to die first and then she's permitted to eat truma, because if she was always permitted, if she died first and he never died, then she was always the wife of a Kohen. What Papa is saying, your teretz or Adam Yitzchak is not understandable, because you're basing this premise that this is an hour is because the assumption is that he is going to die, even though every person dies. But the assumption is that he's going to die very soon, because if you want to make a premise, there's also to say that maybe she's going to die, and therefore, if she died before, then there is no get. You don't even get. So it's all based on cheskas that he's going to pass away. So again, we're back to the question: are you saying by truma a cheskas a person's still alive, or do you say by truma a chayish that you're concerned that maybe he's going to pass away? What's the din by truma? Elom Abaya gives the final teretz. Loy kash, it's not difficult. Ha Rabbi Meir, the loy chayshmi. Rabbi Meir is never concerned about misa. Maybe that's the way to remember it. Rabbi Meir Balanes. He's not worried that a person's going to die. That a person's a cheskas chai and he's going to continue to live. Ha Rabbi Yehuda is always concerned the chayish lemisa, a person's going to die. Where's this machlokes? It's now we learned in the Mishnah. Halokeach yaim mibein hakusim. A guy buys wine from the kusim. Kusim were, let's say, the worst type of amaratzim. They're Jewish people, but they never talk off trumas and meisers. So he has this big barrel, and he wants to drink the wine, and he has no way of separating trumas and maasros because he only has the barrel. So then he says, Oimer, he says, Shnei lugin shani also lahafresh harehen truma. I'm going to leave over 2 lugs. That's going to be truma. I'm going to start drinking the wine now. I didn't give off truma. In the somewhere in this wine barrel, 2 lugin will be truma. Asara, 10 lugin will be meiseration. Tisha, 9 will be meiser sheni. Umeichel. The meiser sheni, you just transfer it over to money. V'shoysim you can drink from the barrel. Divrei meir. Rameir's, you could drink from the barrel. And even though you didn't physically take off the trumas and maasros, eventually when you get to the bottom of the barrel, you leave that over for trumas and maasros. But you see, Rameir's not concerned that the barrel is going to break. So just like Rameir's not concerned that the barrel is going to break, and if the barrel breaks, turns out you ate tevel, you ate treifus, you shouldn't have been eating that. But Rameir is not concerned that the barrel is going to break. So huadin, Rameir is not chayish that a person's going to die. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Oisrem, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon, all aser, because they're concerned that the barrel is going to break. And if the barrel breaks, it turns out that ate trumas and maasros l'mafreya, tevel l'mafreya. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda is the one that's chayish l'misa. So the brisa that says you're also to eat truma will be going according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. That's Abaya's teretz. And our Mishnah is Rameir. Rava says, we go to Amid Beis, Shema meis loy chashinan, Shema yomes chashinan. He has a new teretz. There's a big difference between the 2 places, between the truma and our Mishnah. The truma of our Mishnah concerns itself, did the guy pass away? Guy went on another business trip. The kohen went on a business trip. Could his wife continue eating truma? So we say, we're not concerned, maybe he died. He died, maybe he's good, fine, he's living in Medina Sayyam, and she's considered the wife of a kohen. But Shema Yamos Chashinin, but maybe a person will die. If the condition is based on a person dying, that's what we have to take in consideration, because everybody's going to pass away. And therefore, in the second case, where the man said to his wife, the kohen said to his wife, this should be a get to you 1 hour before I die. Well, what's the question? The question is, will he die? And you now have to figure out which was the hour before he died. That you'll always say that that every hour could be the hour before he's passing away, because it's Shema Yomas. Maybe he will pass away in the future. So this is the way Rava wanted to say that the teretz of our Mishnah, of that brisa, goes according to everybody, Shema Yomas. And Shema Yomas, everybody is concerned. Even Rav Meir would be concerned that maybe a person will die. Amalei Rav Ada bar Matar l'Rava, the case of the barrel will break, the Shema Yomasu. That's a question of maybe it will break, or it's like maybe he will die. Upligi, and we see Rav Meir is not even concerned about Shema Yabaka or Shema Yimamas. Maybe it will break, or maybe it will die. So Rav Meir cannot be the author of the brisa that asers by Truma. Okay, so the first the Gemara says, a barrel is not necessarily going to break. If you put a watchman to it, it's not going to break. But a human is eventually going to die, no matter how many watchmen you put next to it. So Maskiv Lar Masharshi, or Masharshi asks the questions, every shomer needs a shomer. Even with the shomer, it's highly likely, especially over time, a barrel eventually breaks. There's no barrel that lasted 2,000 years. So every barrel is going to break. Maybe not as quickly as a human will pass, but it will break. So therefore, Rav Meir Rav Meir is not concerned about that. Rav said, corrected himself. Shema meis leichashinin. Nobody is concerned that a person did die. So that's why our Mishnah is talking about a past tense. A guy sent a get from Medina Sayyam. You now want to know if he died. We're not worried about that. A guy went on a business trip to Medina Sayyam and he's a Kohen because his wife eat truma. We're not concerned that he passed away in the past tense. But Shema Yomis, maybe a person, if the condition is dependent on maybe he will die in the future, Tanoi, that is a machlokes Tanoim. Rabbi Yehuda says, Shema Yomis, you would be concerned, and that's the author of that brisa, that asks Trumo, when a person says, here's the get 1 hour before I die. But Rabbi Meir still will disagree, and he holds, I'm not concerned that a person will die. I'm not concerned a person died in the past. You always say Cheskas Chaim. Now, Mishnah said, Ashleach chatosim in Medina Sayam, someone sends his carbon chatas from another country, you can bring it that he's still alive. Right? The Gemara of Abina Smicha. How could somebody send a carbon chatas from another country through a shliach and they offer it up as a carbon? Every carbon needs chatas needs you to press your hands on the head of the animal and do vidoi. So how is that possible to bring a chatas when you're not there? It's the carbon of women. Any carbon that a woman brings, she doesn't do smicha. She's exempt from smicha. So it's a woman who's sending her chatas from another country. Rapapa says, b'chatas oif, it's talking about a bird type of chatas. Let's say you had a carbon oil of yared and you can't afford it, or any type of bird type of carbon chatas doesn't need smicha. Only animal chatas need smicha, not bird chatas. Now it's smicha. The Gemara goes on and just explains our Mishnah. Okay? Our Mishnah gave you 3 examples of cases that you say the presumption is that the person is still alive. Get, truma, and a person sending a carbon chatas. Diash meaning get. If our Mishnah only gave you one example that you assume that he's still alive, mishum delayefsha. Because by get you always have to assume a person's alive. Because if you're always going to be worried and nervous that the person passed away, nobody can send the get from Medina Siyam to Megarish's wife because you're always going to have to double check. Maybe he died. So get you always have to say chesket chai. Ava truma de efshar aim aloy. But by the case of truma, let us assume that he died when he went. The kohen went on a business trip. He's dead. What's the woman going to eat? She'll eat chulin. So she'll eat something else. So maybe over there we'll presume that he died. So there, by truma, we say we don't. We also say cheskes chai. The ashmi even truma tizim the delay efshar. A truma sometimes maybe she has nothing else to eat. Maybe she's so poor that she must eat truma. So by truma, I'll go lenient and say cheskes chayim. Ava cheskes ov. But somebody sending a bird to the carbon to the Beis Hamikdash, maybe misveka loylei chulin la'azara. I shouldn't bring something that's puzzle. That's chulin means it's puzzle to azara because maybe he died. So by chatas, by carbon, the Beis Hamikdash should double check to see if he's still alive before being makravit. I should be more chumradik when it comes to Beis Hamikdash stuff. So go on. That's why tzricha. That's why the Mishnah gave you all 3 cases. Another 2 minutes, and then we'll stop. Shloisha devarim Omar. We'll start the Mishnah. Shloisha devarim Omar Rab Elazar ben Parta. Rab Elazar ben Parta said 3 things lifnei chachamim. Became as devarim, and the chachamim liked Rab Elazar ben Parta's psak. What's the psak? Al ir shekifu karkon, on a city that was besieged by a karkon, an army. So a city that was sieged by an army, we can assume that the people are still alive. Or al asvina hamuturefes bayam. Let's say you have a ship that's capsized by sea and it's stuck. It didn't sink yet. So if people saw it from another ship, we can assume even if they went and don't see the ship anymore, we can, as long as that they didn't see the ship sink, we assume the people are still alive. If we see somebody condemned for death, right? As long as we don't, as long as he's still on death row, but he wasn't, the verdict is not 100%, we assume sheim becheskes kayomim. We assume the people are still alive. People in the city are still alive, the people in the ship, and the people in prison are still alive. But in the other case, Aval Ir Kafshua Karkam, a city that was captured. Kafshua means it was captured by the besiegers. So it was captured already. Maybe they killed out the people in the city. Usvina of the Bayam. You saw a ship, and then all of a sudden you saw it maybe sinking or something like that. It's lost in the sea. You didn't see the people. It drowned. It sank. Or they're bringing somebody to the guillotine. So he's already on his way to be killed. Even though you didn't see the actual killing, we assume that he's still alive and still dead. We don't assume 100% he's alive. You say that we're going to give the stringencies of him being alive and the stringency of him passing away. In other words, we assume he's alive and we assume he's dead. How does that play out? Bas Yisrael a kohen. If he's the Yisrael to a kohen, so we're going to assume. Let's say the kohen was the one that was in this city, or he was being brought out to be killed. So then we assume he's dead. So Bas Yisrael, if he's alive, she would eat truma. In this case, we're going to assume that he's dead, and she should not eat truma. Or Bas kohen Yisrael, if she's a daughter of a kohen married to Yisrael. If we assume that Yisrael's died, then the Bas Kohen will go home. The wife will go back to her father's house and eat truma. But we assume maybe he's still alive. Maybe somehow he didn't go to the guillotine. Maybe somehow the ship, although it sank, but he somehow survived. Loi toicha b'truma. We don't. These people don't eat truma because we give them the chumrei chayim, the chumrei mason, the stringencies of life and stringencies of death. One more Gemara. Amalei Abaya. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef, Loi shanu el bebezdin shel Yisrael. The bezdin shel Yisrael, by a Jewish courthouse, if they said that somebody deserves misa, then there's a possibility that they didn't kill him. Because maybe even after the case is closed, they'll find a schus, a merit for him, and not kill him. Avol bebezdin shel goyim, but if it was a goyish courthouse and the case ended and they paskin that this person should die, even the Gama Laidina Lekatola, since they decided to kill this person, Mikta Katale, you could assume 100% they followed through and killed him. So by court of a guy, it's much stricter. Amalei Abaya said, Bezdin shel goyim name the mikabel shoichem. Abaya just asked the question, wait a second, even if it's a goyish bezdin, perhaps goyish bezdin, if you bribe them, you'll be able to walk out, you'll be able to commune his sentence. It's not 100% they're going to kill him. Amalei, so Rabbi Yosef had a realistic approach. He shockingly, when the court takes bribery, before the verdict has been sealed. Once the verdict is sealed, then they don't take bribery. So once the verdict is sealed by a goyish court, and the verdict is that he's supposed to be killed, even if you didn't see him being killed, you assume 100% they followed through and he died. So the one last question, Meisvei, the Gemara asks a question, and the Brisa says that by a Jewish court, if a man ran away and he was condemned to death by a Jewish court, and then he ran away, and he came to a place, a new city, and they said, the Kalmokan, that Ayamdu Shnayim v'Yomru, say, get up and say, if two people say that, this man that came to this city, he already had a verdict in another city, and they paskin, this bezdin paskin, he deserves to die, and those were his eidim. So then, in the city that he ran away, because he was he escaped from the one city that condemned him to death and ran to another Jewish city. If people recognize him and they say, hey, this city that he was condemned to death, then that's enough. That you kill him into this courthouse. So what do you see from there? That why do they kill him in the next city? He ran away from the previous city that condemned him to death. Maybe in the previous city they found a merit and they're not going to kill him. Maybe they overturn the ruling in the Jewish city. So we see that even by Jewish courts, they don't overturn the ruling. And how did Brisa said that no, Jewish courts have potential to overturn the ruling, and that's how Rabbi Yosef learned our Mishnah. Answers the Gemara answers Dilma B'Reach Shani. When a person runs away from a bezdin, from a Jewish court, then the bezdin will not overturn the ruling. If they see the guy ran away, they paskin he should die, and then he runs away, even the Jewish court will see that there's no way to find a merit, and therefore they will not overturn the ruling that he deserves to be killed. But if he didn't run away, and even though he was gepaskin to be killed in a Jewish court, perhaps he's not going to be killed because maybe they're going to find something to overturn that ruling, and that's what our Mishnah is discussing. Okay, we'll continue with this tomorrow.